Hello, myself Sunil Nair, and basically here we are talking about the earthquakes. In earthquake, basically, what actually the earthquakes basically are. What actually the earthquake basically are. So in basically this, basically we are taught that this is the earthquake, that is the earthquake, and then basically we talked that how basically the earthquakes are basically working, how basically the nuclear power company gets the stable data, and how basically they say that basically we are getting the stable data, and like this the stable basically data are equal to not earthquake, unstable data are equal to earthquakes. So that basically the group decides that this data basically can be used in first floor, second floor, like this 24 floors are 240 floors are basically there. So set of groups basically has done the R&D, and like this basically they say that basically yes, basically we this person basically can source to 250 floor, 235 floor. His data basically can suit is 240 floor. So like this basically his data basically can suits to this all floors basically. So according to that basically this data basically can be, because you don't know na, basically who basically is going to stay in which floor basically. You basically can't say that if mm, anybody say that basically this if he is a software professional person basically, then he can basically he can basically have his flat in 10th floor basically. If he is a doctor, then basically he can have his data flat in 11th floor basically. Like this basically it's not written basically anywhere basically that 11th floor is basically for doctor, 12th floor is basically for engineers, 13th floor is basically for the legal groups. Like this basically it's not written anywhere basically. But few people, that's why basically few people says that basically the energy department says that basically we don't know the basically that in which floor basically the people are going to stay, and that basically we can't set also basically. We can basically we can't set, and we, for example in the software engineer, for example one software professional basically is staying in 10th floor basically. That does not mean that the entire environment basically you are going to set as a software professional basically. There it might possible that the chartered accountant people also come, doctors basically also may visit that particular area. It's not possible, right? It's not possible that basically the only software professional basically people are going to stay in that 10th floor basically. So like this basically the environment basically are set it, and basically you can't set that basically the 10th floor is basically for only for software professionals. It can be any professionals basically. So you can't say basically, and government also basically can't decide. It's not possible. Practically, it is not possible. Impossible, because in 10th floor basically only software professional are uh, going to stay. That you can't say na basically. It's might possible that his relative basically might be chartered accountant. So like this basically you have to set the entire environment. For sports people you have to set the environment. Each and every category is basically where basically they gets the income basically, whichever category basically it's connected with the income basically, and the income can be in the form of anything basically. It can be in the form of money, it can be a barter system, it can be anything basically. Even basically the pujaris basically comes in the building basically, so you have to set the environment for them also basically. So any people basically can come. The girls basically comes, and girls basically it might possible that girl doctor and girl basically men doctor basically also can come. Any basically people can come basically. So you can't basically set the fixed environment. You can't set the fixed environment basically. So that's why basically the in earthquake basically whenever the stable data are coming, you have to set the matrix basically, which is designed by the earthquake department only. They only basically designs the data that this is the first floor basically. So this type of all data basically you have to set. This is second floor, this all data basically you have to set. But you can't set a fixed data basically. This is for this first floor is only for software professional, second floor is for only for engineers, third floor is only for doctors. That you can't set. If you are setting, then basically it's not going to work only basically. It's not going to work only basically. That's why basically the government only basically is not going to give the authority basically. The energy department only for example, one person told that basically this is the building, and energy company basically told that basically we are going to set the environment. So builder basically told that basically in the first floor basically please set the environment of doctor, second floor please to store the environment of engineers, in third floor basically store the environment of the software professionals. That is not possible basically. So that basically nuclear power company basically is never going to do, never going to do. So that's why basically the contractor and the building creator people basically they never talks to the nuclear power company, because they know they know basically that it's not going to work basically. Like this basically ideas are not going to work. So they basically never contacts to nuclear power companies and the profession and the power company professional basically. They basically never talks to those people because the things is now not going to work. Then basically what is the meaning of doing the talk? But you can take the ideas basically how they are setting the things basically, how basically. So according to that basically in future basically the data which they are sending, according to that basically you can create the system basically, create the construction buildings basically. Nowadays basically the software company also jumped into the construction industry basically. From software basically you can create the cement software basically. From set of softwares basically you can set the cement. Software means basically, what is software is basically, one person literally asked how basically software basically can create the cement. Then he told that basically software basically are set of designs, set of designing basically are done. In this basically designing lots of information basically are stored. To view the design basically few layouts basically are done, database are designed. Like this basically the data basically are stored. That data basically gets processed in the server basically, and the server company basically says that basically server company know that basically this software is going to generate is basically specifically created for the cement company. Cement company means cement data, because the data which has entered into the system basically, their energy basically is going to generate the cement data basically. That's why basically they told that basically this software is going to generate cement basically. So cement is going to generate by this software basically. That basically the nuclear power company knows. Like this basically each and every construction material basically are prepared by the softwares basically. So this building basically, if anybody says that basically which building is this, then you can say that basically literally it's a software building basically, created from the this software basically energy basically. That's basically there basically you have to take care of lots of things basically. There basically lots of things basically has to be taken care. So that basically the nuclear power company basically takes it. There basically there's no need to worry about the software company basically. They didn't need, they basically don't need to do anything basically, because the nuclear power company sets basically entire environment basically. For that basically there is no need to contact to nuclear power company and basically say that basically we have basically have created this building basically from this all data basically. So these all are the data basically. If you want that data basically, then we can send that data basically. Then they told that basically there is no need to send the data basically. We can decode the data basically. Then according and there is no need to send the data because there are only 22 blood groups na basically. So the data which is going to come, that is basically 100% going to come from 22 blood groups only basically. 22 blood group is there na basically. So data basically is going to come from this only basically, because you can't say that this particular building is only for a blood groups. You can't say that this building basically is for E blood group. You can't say that this particular building is restricted for the G blood group. You can't restrict the blood groups basically. It might possible that any other blood group basically can come, but few buildings basically in this world basically are restricted for that basically. That basically, that is basically also basically might be few percentage of the global warming basically, because there basically only particular certain level of groups blood group basically people only basically can visit that area basically. In few area, few building basically only human clone basically visits. No other basically are supposed to visit that building basically. That's why basically people takes the appointments. If they get the appointment, then only basically they go. Literally basically they never goes the area. Otherwise, if they go, then basically it might possible that other company group basically might be getting into problem, or basically that person basically who has went that person basically will get into problem because in that building basically only this blood group people basically can go. No other blood group people can visit that area basically. So like this basically the earthquake basically are connected very deeply basically, very deeply. So that building basically this blood group data only basically can go. That means the building is specifically created for this blood group. So when the building basically is standing at the, assume that it's 200 floor or 220 floor basically, so that building is specifically created for this blood groups only basically. So the energy basically which is going to pass to the surround the building basically, that is the stable data basically, so that the building is not supposed to move left side right side. That building basically is going to set this all energy. After going to set this all energy, then only basically the uh, building will be stable. If this stable data basically is going to become unstable, next time the data basically came which was basically some unstable, then basically earthquake basically might happen. And that data basically comes from where basically we have that basically we don't go to the gas pump station and basically say that basically we are sending the database. It's not like that. The power company basically sends the data in the environment also and in the house also. Like this, the basically the environment are basically set, and that's the attraction basically. Attraction basically is there of the each and every energy basically they sets. So it's very very dangerous. That's why with the basically trees are basically created. Why the trees are created? Lots of people say that without trees also basically the city can survive, right? Then he told that yes, basically city can survive without tree basically. But why the tree basically got, why the tree basically got created? Why basically the tree got created basically? The reasons basically are then the tree basically got created. The reasons are basically there. The tree basically has created. The reasons basically are there. The tree basically which is created. The reasons are there. Why? Because it circulates the air basically, and it's basically the magnetic system. Basically, air basically sends the data to particular location basically. So air basically knows that basically this particular air power basically which is sent, that is for this particular building basically. So just see the dangerous basically the environment basically which is settled basically, the trees basically which is going to send the data to the particular particular building basically. That tree basically is also designed in that way basically. So one tree basically which is basically done by the particular city people basically, that are the corporators, MLAs and the chief minister basically. The each and every trees basically are mapped basically. That is mapped in the environment, and they do the certain level of task basically. That if you want to set the environment in this building, then this tree only basically can do that. So according to that basically the environment basically are set basically. So it's not like that basically you are basically staying like this in the building basically, and the data is basically stable. There are lots of basically hard work basically the set of groups basically people are doing basically. That's why basically the buildings in this world basically are stable basically. There are lots of people basically who are doing lots of hard work basically. The air basically is doing hard work. How much hard work basically air is doing, how much hard work the tree basically is doing. That means the nature basically is doing how much hard work. That's why people says that basically the if you don't do anything to the nature, then nature is going to help you. If you are finishing nature, then basically nature is going to give you something basically. So Meghalaya basically is the example that basically in Cherrapunji basically the global warming was basically ongoing from the different states basically. There's something basically there basically they have not destroyed the nature. So due to that, basically the rain basically got fall. As the rain was falling, the global warming problem was getting solved. Like this, they basically realized that basically the global warming basically can solve from the artificial rain basically. Then basically the 365 days basically rain was getting falling there in the Chirapunji, the highest rain falling city basically. That also you can give this name. But the logic was this basically. The logic behind was this. That was global warming issue was there basically. But like this basically you can't do the experiment in each and every city basically. It's very dangerous basically, because the other states data basically are getting passed, and when it merged to the particular city basically, it might possible that some big thing basically might happen in future basically. So you can't do that for the long term basically. For all city basically you can't do. For one or two city basically it's possible, but it's not possible for the all states and for all the cities basically. That's basically not suggestible, because each and every city basically are connected with set of satellites, and this satellite basically is moving the each and every city. They are basically pushing the each and every earth planet basically contain each and every city. They are basically getting pushed by the satellites basically, and satellite basically are getting connected to this city on the assumption that basically this data basically is like this only. So just see basically how dangerous it is. If you are changing that, then basically it's going to affect you only. That is the earthquake going to 100% going to happen. Because if the satellite is not picking your city basically data, then basically they are not going to fetch the data of the pushing. That means it's going to convert to earthquake only basically. Pushing means earth planet is moving, na basically. So basically, it's not moving automatically. Somebody is there, na, basically, who is basically pushing the Earth planet. So that is the satellite, na, basically. Same way, basically, the building basically are stable. There is no earthquake basically coming. That means air basically, the power company has sent the data, but that's data basically it's in the environment basically. But you have to set that environment basically data to proper place basically. The proper place basically, proper address basically has given that this building basically contains this type of data. That also basically 240 floor building basically are there. So you have to set this buildings first floor basically this data, second floor this data. So you can just imagine basically how basically the artificial intelligence basically comes from here only basically. The people basically who created the artificial intelligence project, they got the idea basically from this only basically. That is the that is the building. How basically the tree basically is knowing that this air basically is this energy basically has to dump into this building, and this building basically 240 floors are there, and in 240 floors basically first floor basically you have to set this building data, in second floor basically this building this data, in third floor basically this type of energy data. How basically they know that? That's the artificial intelligence basically. That's the artificial intelligence. And there basically you can say that from there basically the artificial intelligence idea basically might have got by the set of group basically who say that basically we have created artificial intelligence project basically. But this is created long before basically. This is created long before. So each and every project basically which we are creating, that energy is basically created long before basically. I have taken one example of the CRM project basically. That was the example that one of the software company basically told that basically we have launched the first CRM project in the market, and these are all the project managers basically who taken the data basically. So that basically is the best example basically. That also basically the dangerous example basically. That was the very dangerous example. And this basically that video basically is also very dangerous example. Artificial intelligence basically got born. How basically it got born? This is the reason basically how they got the born. How they basically born. How basically they got born basically. So it's not so easy also basically to stable the building basically. It's not so easy to stable the entire Earth planet also basically. It's so difficult to stable the one single building basically. Then you can just imagine it's the Earth planet entire basically. There are more than 1 crore buildings basically. How it might be basically handling. So it's not so easy basically. The satellite basically are really basically doing the work basically. That also very uh, good level work basically they are doing. That's basically the each and every floor basically each and every buildings basically are stable basically. But in India basically the earthquake basically mostly never happens. If happens then basically the magnitude at 3, 4, 5. But big level earthquake basically never happens. Reason basically they have created the world basically. They have created each and every buildings basically. Reason Sanskrit and Tamil basically is created by whom basically. They have basically created the world basically. From Tamil and Sanskrit only the whole world basically language basically got created basically. That means the entire world basically is created from these two language only basically. You can't say that basically that the France basically country is having the Tamil language and is created from the Tamil and from the Sanskrit basically. You can't say directly that it's created from Tamil. It's created from Sanskrit. It might possible that it might be created from mix also basically. Tamil and Sanskrit both might have used. That basically is 99% possibility basically. That both basically might have used. 100 99 possibilities that was basically both might not have used basically. And 99 possibilities both might not have used. So there are basically more than I think 70 languages basically in this world basically. So they basically are created from Tamil language and Sanskrit language. But you can't say basically that which language is created from which language. That basically it's very difficult to say basically. Not difficult basically. It's challenging basically work also basically you can say. And nobody basically disclose these secrets basically. Nobody disclose their secrets basically. So like this basically the earthquake basically is there. So earthquake basically works on the base of certain level of data that is basically handled by the artificial intelligence project. Also basically we can give this name, and that project I don't know in which technology basically that has developed. The environment basically setting the entire city environment, and basically that also for example power company are sending the data. That data basically we have to set to all the buildings basically. That also basically this data has to set to this building only. That also basically this data is supposed to be in this floor basically. So you can just imagine here artificial intelligence basically. This is the artificial intelligence basically. This is the best example of artificial intelligence basically. This is the best example of artificial intelligence basically. Intelligence basically. AI basically, that name is the name basically is given as a AI basically. The name basically is given as a AI basically. So you can just imagine basically the thing basically is. So it's very difficult to handle the world only basically. And basically the group basically who are in the satellite basically in the universe basically, their life basically are very tough basically. It's very difficult basically to have that type of life basically. Because the people basically who created the AI basically of this environment basically, they only basically might be always basically changing the informations basically, changing the data, always basically checking the each and everything basically, that basically the weather data is correctly going or not, because it might convert to the earthquake no, basically it is going to convert to the earthquake basically if the data is not getting set to the perfect location basically. For example, power company has sent the data for 5,000 buildings, and each building basically is supposed to get this all data only. Basically, this data is for this building, this data is for this building, and within this data, basically, it's for this floor, that floor, that floor, that floor, that floor. So that basically the AI example. Basically, this is the best example of AI. Basically, and that basically is developed by set of basically the team set. It might be developed by the mostly by developed by the nuclear power company and the power companies and the energy companies only basically, and the help basically is taken by of the air basically, that is Pawan. So like this basically the entire environment basically is settled of the city basically, and the buildings are basically stable, and there is no earthquake basically. Reason, the power company and the energy company and the nuclear power company has sent the data according to the requirement basically. And that requirement basically the government only gives the requirement basically, that we want this all data. This basically we have already discussed, that government told that basically we want this data, so send the data according to that basically. So they basically sends the data according to that basically. So that's very dangerous. Government basically literally have that full control basically. Lots of people say that government actually what they are doing here, just moving the red light car, what actually they are doing. So these all basically are very dangerous. They are literally setting the environment only basically. They are literally setting the environment. So if they are setting the environment, then basically the thing basically which is going to happen in that city basically, that is going to happen according to the setted environment basically. According to the environment setted only the things are basically going to happen basically. So like this is also basically a little bit about the earthquakes. So if the government say that basically we have to set this environment, so few people says that basically the government actually gives the earthquake or basically not, because they said basically they basically say that basically we want this type of environment basically, and basically in this basically lots of basically sometimes basically the bad of basically the war also basically sometimes starts, that we have told this basically to you, that basically we want this type of data and you have sent this type of data. So that verification of the data that required also basically lots of things basically. That's why basically each country basically required the literated people basically, the educated people basically. So how basically they are going to check basically there's the data which is sent by the 170 country basically, that is perfectly sent or not basically. That basically only basically can be test on the base of the how the basically city behavior is basically. Earthquake is happening or not happening. If earthquake is not happening, that means the environment data basically has set it perfectly. If earthquake is happening, that means basically the data has not set perfectly. And basically, if data has set it perfectly, then basically the data sent basically is not perfectly. So basically, it can be. So for that, basically, you need to check. Na basically, you need to create the report basically where actually the problem was. Like this, basically, if they say that basically there was no our problem basically, we have sent that data only basically which you have told. So basically, how you will justify that basically? That's the data which you have sent is this, and the requirement basically given by us that was this. How you will justify is basically. So the knowledgeable people is required here basically. That is the energy level knowledgeable people. They only basically can set this justification basically, can give this justification, can set this report justification basically. So this is also basically little bit about the earthquake basically. In next video basically we are going to see a little bit more about the earthquakes.